Raise your hand if you were outside the house tonight and got absolutely jump scared by this trade. Holy freaking crap, ladies and gentlemen. On this random Friday night, the Carolina Hurricanes, Chicago Blackhawks, I guess, and the Colorado Avalanche decided to make a blockbuster of epic proportions. A trade that in terms of raw magnitude might be only matched by the Matthew Tkachuk trade. We are in pretty uncharted territory. January isn't even over, but I think we have the trade of the year. We're going to be breaking down every single piece in this deal and why especially this is such a monumental trade for both the Avs and the Canes, and why it changes really both of their futures. So make sure you watch till the end as we break down this complete trade with all the details and all the analysis, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this as we lead up to the deadline in March. Though, with the preview of the deadline with this deal, we might be in store for a lot more. Now, the funniest part about this trade is that we initially got the details with Taylor Hall being the main frontrunner in the deal. As Pierre LeBrun says, it's still being worked on, but a 3-team deal involving Taylor Hall is close to completion. We didn't even know about all the other pieces for a while. And NHL News always has us covered, giving us the full details on this deal, and it is an absolute doozy. First, we have the Carolina Hurricanes, who got the biggest package in this deal in terms of raw players, getting Mikko Rantanen at 50% retained by Chicago, as well as Taylor Hall and the rights to Nils Juntorp, who I feel bad for being in this deal because he's not going to be getting a lot of attention. But Juntorp Nation, we will rise one day, don't you worry. To the Blackhawks is just a measly third-round pick in 2025, but to the Colorado Avalanche is where the bulk of the other assets are going, with Marty Necas, Jack Drury, a 2025 second, and a 2026 fourth, going to the Avs. I just love that for some reason Chicago is involved in this deal. Taylor Hall is an okay player at this point, but when you really consider the rest of the players here in the deal, throwing him in and having this random third team involved is pretty funny. But don't get it twisted. In terms of the actual players, Mikko Rantanen is the prize of the ball here. Easily the best player that has been involved in a trade since Matthew Tkachuk, and I would argue in ways even better. Of course, one-time Stanley Cup champion of the Avs, he has been the definition of consistency. His offense has been electrifying, especially when you look at the last 3 seasons where he's had back-to-back 100-point campaigns, and this year on pace for 107, a career high. So you might be asking yourself, especially in the position the Avs are in where they've been declining over these past couple of years since their Stanley Cup win, why the heck would they trade Rantanen in the first place? This was actually something that we've seen creeping up a lot over the last couple of days, especially with Rantanen's impending free agency. There were a lot of questions about his future with Colorado. Reportedly, and this is just, of course, the rumor mill out there, he was asking for $14 million on his contract extension, and that would have been an absolutely massive deal. You can make the case that Rantanen is worth that, and considering his performances, his production, I think you could have a pretty good case. I think Rantanen would especially. But it seems like for the Avs, they knew they weren't going to get Rantanen under and just decided to trade him while they could. I just got to say this. We focus a lot on this channel on the teams that win the deals, who gets on top, everything like that. But I love the balls on these teams, on these GMs for making this trade happen. No matter who wins, hockey is better when we see these type of deals, and I just love that both of these teams went out and made something, especially in the cases of a team like Carolina, who's still having a pretty good year. They decided to get a absolute superstar, and that is what I have been waiting for. It's been a long time criticism of mine that Carolina hasn't had that next level superstar to take their offense to the next level, especially in the playoffs. The closest I think they got to that was Jay Gensel last year and his connection with Aho, but of course didn't sign him long term, and that wasn't really going to be a long term thing anyways. You see what with Rantanen, of course, I think if they're going to trade for him, they're going to want to re-sign him, and if they do that, that is exactly the type of player I think they need. His power forward game, his goal scoring ability, there is so much to like, and also the playoff performances I think is the most important thing that Carolina is getting here. You look at what he's been able to do over the last few years. He has never had a playoffs. His only playoffs where he was below a point per game was back in 2018 when he had his second NHL season, so that's respectable. Since then, you look at his playoff performances and his totals, it has been across the board magnificent. All throughout, he has been a playoff performer for the Avs, and I think that will carry over to the Canes, who desperately need that consistency. You look at that forward group now, and boy howdy does it look interesting. Martin Necas was an excellent player and having a great year for the Canes, but he was slowing up a little bit, and hasn't really proved himself to be a consistent playoff performer. Rantanen absolutely has, and I think he'll take that offense to the very next level. I'm a huge fan of Rantanen though, and considering the Canes' issues with their forward group, their top end, and their consistent scoring, this is exactly what the doctor ordered for Carolina. To me, this is exactly what they need to get over the top, finally be a team that not just goes to the second round this year, but actually is able to play for a Stanley Cup. I think Carolina can be in that position. I think they need to be aggressive. I didn't think they were going to be this aggressive, though. But Eric Tulsky, man, you have done miracles on me. I absolutely adore this acquisition by Carolina. And even though he's going to want a lot of money, Carolina is in a position where I think they can afford to pay him and should be paying Rantanen. I think he's exactly the type of player they need. And hey, maybe it was happening in free agency, but I like they went after him right before the deadline to get him a lot of time to acclimate to the team before the playoffs begin this year. Now, that's not even it for who the Canes acquire. You also went after Taylor Hall, who I don't think is going to be a massive part of this deal by any means, but I think as a bottom six player, he'll be fine. He brings experience, and offensively, he has his moments, especially on the power play, but I don't think it's going to be much of a major factor for the Canes, but who knows? Going from Chicago to Carolina, that is a boost in the teammate quality, so I think he'll be just a fine 40-point guy who will pitch in here and there, though hopefully he'll get a big opportunity in the playoffs, and that's something that he hasn't had for a while now. And this is one that we were looking at as a potential trade deadline piece. We heard Taylor Hall recently saying how he really isn't enjoying his time in Chicago, and that was really the first bit of news that we knew that the writing was on the wall. He was going to go away from Chicago no matter what, and it seems that the Canes just decided to go for a 2-for-1 and do it right in the same trade. Now that leads us on to the Colorado Avalanche, and I think a lot of people are going to be saying that they got absolutely robbed in this deal, but here's the thing. If they knew they weren't going to re-sign a player like Mikko Rantanen, I think trading him, getting as many assets as possible is a worthy cause. And I think for the position they got, for the amount of assets they got back, it was a fine deal. I don't think there's any case where you trade a player like Mikko and you win the deal necessarily, but I think for Colorado, they're just getting ahead of a situation that was going to be escalating, and if they knew they were going to re-sign him, I think getting those assets here was a worthy decision. Plus, Marty Necas, when he is at his best, has proven to be an elite player. Even though he has slowed down recently, his start to the season was prolific, and you can see still, even though he slowed down, he still is on pace for 92 points this year. He's going to immediately be placed with Nathan MacKinnon, and those two I think are going to be cooking. Necas with the speed, the skill, he's going to be able to match MacKinnon's speed and intensity and work off him in the right ways. Even though I don't think he's going to be up to Mikko Rantanen's standard, he is somebody that is a little bit cheaper, and I think for the Avs in ways, a little bit younger, and that could maybe help towards the future. Even though I don't think there's quite enough playoff pedigree, under Colorado, under MacKinnon, that could change. Now for the Avs, it was looking like they were going to go after Jesperi Kotkaniemi, but they decided to actually pay attention to the player that Kotkaniemi is and his contract and decide we're not going to do that. They instead went after a center, Jack Drury, who will most likely fit more of a fourth line role for them. I don't think it's going to be the answer for the Avs. I think we could see them trade for another center before the deadline is done, but he's somebody that will be a fine centerman, a fine defensive guy who will bring some good qualities here and there. I'm not a huge fan of Drury and what he's been with Carolina, but I think in Colorado and a new system, we'll see what the fit is there. And like we mentioned in the return, you don't just get players back for the Avs. You also get a couple of picks here. It's nothing crazy. It's not a first round pick or anything, but you get a second and a fourth rounder. So it's not nothing. I would have liked to see maybe another prospect a part of the deal, especially with how many Carolina does have. But again, I don't think it's the end of the world, even though I think they do lose a Mikko Rantanen trade here in terms of actual quality. Again, when you put the context into things, especially with Rantanen's pending free agency, I think it works. Plus, we heard so much before Necas' recent contract was signed about him potentially wanting out of Carolina. Even though he had a great start, it looks like Carolina was just using him as trade bait, pumping up his numbers so that they can deal him in the end. I think he will be a good fit, though, for the Avs. Even though he won't be Mikko Rantanen, and it's hard to be, I think Necas is going to be a very worthy first liner for the Avs and somebody that they can still build around with MacKinnon on that side. With the speed there especially, that's going to be a weapon that I think he'll use really well with MacKinnon by his side. Now, the part of this deal that might not get talked about enough is Marty Necas and his impending contract, because even though we talked about Rantanen and him potentially getting moved because of that impending free agency, Necas isn't very far behind. He does make $6.5 million, but only for this year and next season. So after next year, he's also going to be a free agent. Now, I don't think he'll command anywhere near the amount of money that Rantanen will, but still, it is something to consider in this deal. With the Avs not wanting to sign one of their free agents, Necas could be falling up in that alley. Though, I think also with the savings there, I think Necas will have no problem signing in Colorado. I think it'll be a good fit in the end and still a great player for the Avs to get. Though I think for the Avs especially, I want to see more deals. I want to see them get even more creative, add a centerman. That to me will really make or break this deal for me. We'll have to wait and see for them. In terms of just the raw reactions and trade grades for this, I'm going to give the Carolina Hurricanes a straight A. I think they did fantastic in this deal. They don't just get a player like Rantanen who they needed, but also some solid depth in Taylor Hall too. And I think the offensive upgrades here are going to be substantial. For the Avs, I think considering context and everything, I still think it's solid for them. I'm going to give them a straight B. Again, I would have liked to see maybe another prospect, but I think I'm nitpicking at that point. Still considering it, everything though, I think they always are going to lose a Mikko Rantanen trade. trade. Considering that, though, I think they did just fine. And I guess for Chicago, whatever, man. It's a third-round pick. You retained a bunch of salary for that. I thought you were just going to get a third-round pick for Hall anyways. I guess a C+. I don't know. Man, I still can't believe what happened here. I still can't. I was at the Wisconsin Badgers game watching a great game between Wisconsin and Michigan. Absolutely blew my voice out, which in retrospect, not the greatest idea considering the Canes and the Avs were about to cook. But I hope you guys still did enjoy the breakdown. If you did, make sure that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and comment down below your thoughts on this whopper of a deal. Who do you think wins? Carolina, Colorado, Chicago? Let me know all your thoughts down below on that, and click on this card for all my trade content one run playlist. I will see you guys in the next one though. Have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.